Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. She is a business intuitive strategist / specialist, and she helps people find their brand, to work their business in alignment and through their authenticity. And she also specifically works with, not specifically, but she works with a lot of neurodivergence, which I think is fascinating because I feel like most entrepreneurs might tend to be in that particular field. I'm speaking for myself, of course, because I also was recently diagnosed with ADHD myself. So I can't wait to dive in. Her name is Carly Cowell. And thank you so much for being here today, Carly.
Oh, my pleasure. Really excited to be here. Can't wait to chat. And I always love chatting to people across the pond, as we say. It's just a different conversation. Love it.
Yeah, I absolutely love the fact that you are also from across the pond. It's so funny, we don't say that here, but I've heard that that's something that's said over there. So it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's cool. But yeah, I mean, especially because I think that we forget that there's so much more than just our culture, but not only that, not only is there more than our culture, but all of our cultures have so many of the same struggles and things and pain points, and we can learn from each other. And so I love this, that you're able to jump on and share more about what you do. So why don't we just start with telling our guests what you do, what you offer, what you focus on, etc.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think it's interesting how we can have cultural differences. A lot of my clients are actually American, which I just love, and I've had to adapt a few of those. But I just love that when we strip this down to its bare core, and when we strip down to us as humans, we are exactly that, just human. We all have the same experience. So I love what you said there. So I'm a personal brand strategist, or business mentor, business specialist. I kind of go under a few different things. In a way, it doesn't always matter about what my title is. I've come to that realization. It's about what I do and what I help people with. So it is about putting more of themselves into their brand, into their business model, things that work with them. And from my own experience, we want to have a business to give ourselves more freedom around our family. It's really easy to go into a trap of that freedom becoming not freedom and taking over our lives. So I like to streamline it for people, get them to tune into themselves first. It goes very much against what we learn, especially neurotypical methods. We learn that it's all about your ideal client, it's all about your target market. I love to what I call you approach. Let's go with you first. Get to grips with who you are at your core, what your values are, tune into you, put that into your brand and business, and it'll attract more of the people that want to work with you, who are drawn to you naturally. So there is a little bit, it is a little bit spiritual for me. I'm quite intuitive, and I really like to bring that out to people if they're holding back, if they're masking when we're talking neurodiversity. I did it masked for 40 odd years. I like to kind of try and break that down and put them into it, and then know how to share it. That's the next thing. What I do is almost two parts. It's get to the core of you, who you are. How do we share it? I feel like a lot of coaches get to that core of who you are, leave people thinking, I don't know how to say that. What is my message? What is my mission? What is my brand story? And that's the bit I like to help with. So it's two parts: dig deep, strip it back. So I'm very animated, you'll see this. And then how do we share that with the right people? And there's a whole, I'm sure we'll chat about this, Sarah, but I like to go off on who you want to attract, who you want to repel. It's all in alignment with you. So start with you. That's probably just wrapped up the whole podcast episode in a way, but yeah, start with you first. That's my method.
I really, really like that, especially because, like, as you said, society conditions us to do things a certain way, like neurotypical, right? And not only that, but I've always been drawn to entrepreneurship. I mean, I've been like a complete entrepreneur in the last 3 to 4 years. Before that, would like dabble in it here and there. But for me, I was trying to find different jobs, that were of the entrepreneur type, that were, trying to fit myself into it. So I've done sales, for instance, and, because there's a lot of freedom in sales. I've done sales. I've done like MLMs, like Mary Kay. I'm pretty sure you guys have Mary Kay over there too, cosmetics or whatever. And so, I mean, I've done different things, but it never felt like me. And I was never very successful at it because while I loved the freedom of it, I'm like, I don't want to sell something that doesn't feel good to me. I mean, even selling alarm systems. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to help
protect someone, but it still didn't feel, I felt too much like I was trying to convince someone of something, that I was just kind of like, this is still my job. And when I found what I do, so I'm a spiritual channeler slash tarot reader. And so when I stepped into this work, it was the first time I felt a glimpse of me. It was the first time I was like, oh my God, this feels like me. It feels natural. It feels like not only that, but I can see the impact that my readings and sessions are having on the world. And so that did make a huge difference. But I do think even for those that have found their, their spark or their purpose, we still kind of struggle with the idea of, oh, we should do it this way because that's how they did it and they're successful. But then it doesn't always work that way for us because, like, to your point, it's not, we're not living in alignment, doing what's authentic to us. So we need more people like you out there to really help those, figure out how to find that grounding, I guess. So, that's so cool that's like the first thing you focus on is you got to figure out who you are. You got to figure out what lights you up. Got to figure out what your values are. Because, and I even said, I love how you say, even repel certain clients, because you know what, as a tarot reader, I can tell you there are certain types of clients that I don't want to work with. They're the ones that are calling up and asking me, is he cheating on me? Is he this? Is he? And it's very draining. And personally, the way that I would see that question is, oh, if you're asking that question, there's a much deeper issue. And I know the kind of clients that I want to work with are the ones that want to grow, that want to expand, that usually are on a similar spiritual journey, and I'm just kind of their mirror, right? And then there's certain ones that are just there for the lower vibrational questions. And I'm like, oh no, I want to avoid those. But you see tarot reader and they can attract those. So I love how it's also thinking about who you don't want to work with, because I don't think that that's talked about enough either. So yeah, I love all of that. So what I would want to know more of is, how did you find this work? It sounds like you have done the working for someone else thing for a while and it didn't work out. So I want to hear how that went to what you do now.
Yeah, and it's a funny story. Well, it's a funny one because I always think I don't really sometimes know where my story begins. If we're going way back to maybe 2001, 2002, where I first got into my fitness career. So I was actually a personal trainer before this, but I've always been creative. I've always done creative subjects at school, at college, at university, and I ended up going to fitness on the back of actually losing my mum. So it was actually grief when I was 21, lost my mum, went to the gym and find that was my place. It was just helping me get through that. And that's actually so I was on that creative journey. I'd gone to university for the second time. I ended up at university 3 times just because now I know late diagnosis ADHD. I didn't know back then why things weren't clicking like they should. I was talking about the shoulds. I've done a post today saying screw the shoulds because it's too much. We've got too many things that we're meant to follow. It now makes sense. But yeah, I was trying to follow that path. Didn't work. I went into fitness. Fast forward some years, successful fitness business. I have worked for companies in between, but actually I probably have mainly been self-employed. I think that's one thing, even though I didn't know about the ADHD, I think I just always knew that I couldn't work for people. I just can't be told what to do. Basically, I'm a bit of a rebel. It doesn't sit very well, unfortunately. I've tried it. I've probably had plenty of employed positions, but I would sooner walk out of that job than take something that's not in alignment with me. So yeah, I've been on a self-employment journey since about 2006. But 2009, I launched my own personal training business. Even though I had the degree in advertising, uh, recession, it's so many layers, this story. I'll try and keep it on track. But the recession, I lost confidence. I went back to fitness, which I'd been in already, and launched my own business. I had clients begging me back that had gone to other personal trainers, tried 2 other trainers, wanted me back. Now it's that I know now it's that personal touch. It's putting you in. So it's always been there. Did that until 2020, still running a successful fitness and wellbeing business. Went into very much mindfulness, well-being as well as the fitness. It was very holistic. And then we all know what happened in 2020, and I lost my business overnight. It was literally fully booked to nothing. I tried to do it online. It wasn't for me. I missed that human connection. So then, yeah, in that time, I sat back and I had to really, I always say about tuning into you. It's a big saying I say about tune into you. And I think that's anything in life, but even in business, tune into you. What do you want? What are your values? What are you good at? What are you brilliant at? And as women, we downplay it a bit. Brilliance, oh, we're showing up for, I can't possibly share my brilliance. So help with that as well. And I sat down, tuned into me, I don't know, it's like a light bulb moment in that 2020, which was a weird year anyway, wasn't it? Around the whole globe. And it just was like a light bulb moment. It was that creative spark that I'd been missing, that I'd run through my business. I'd done my own marketing. I'd run events, but it just came to me. I was like, Joe, I've got a degree there. I'd got a first class degree in copywriting with advertising. What is it? Creative advertising, copywriting. Wasn't really using it. And it just felt like a good time to kind of bring it back full circle. Some of my fitness clients actually became branding clients. They launched their own business. So it shows the power of personal branding, for one, because you can pivot completely from fitness to branding. Still end up with clients that were from that era. And I've not looked back. I love it. I just love that connection with people, a bit like yourself. Well, more intuitive than actually being a medium. But sometimes I can get, I'm good at getting to the essence of people beyond what they think we can get to. Sometimes I'll just get them and they will literally say, how did you get that? It's like you're talking what I'm thinking. And I help them to put that into their brand, and let's connect with those people. And then, yeah, there's so many layers. I call it soulful selling, so reframing selling, about repelling people and having that confidence to repel people. Share your voice, get feisty if you need to, repel the people you do not want to work with. I had it in fitness. So many people who would not do the work. They thought I was a personal trainer. I had a magic wand, and they just say if it was weight loss, I'll lose weight just because you're a personal trainer, right? That's your job. I'll just lose weight. Well, no, you have to put the work in as well. So that was my first experience and taste of repelling people, to then find out who you want to attract, who you naturally attract. If we're talking ADHD, even like myself, Sarah, sometimes I think there's something in that, the synchronicity in we find each other. Neurodiverse people find each other and we click. And I love it. I just love that spark. And even this, I'm loving this conversation because we are each other's sort of person. I think that's so key in business. You have to find your people, whether it's clients, audience, collaborations, just the people you surround yourself in. It's so important. I don't know if that's answered it. I think I've gone way off on one, but that's in a nutshell my story.
That is so interesting. So I think a lot of people who are starting out with their own business, I think, and then, it's a new experience, it's fun and exciting. I think a lot of the times people immediately think that's it, that's my passion, that's my purpose. And it isn't always it. Just because you have a successful business and you are an entrepreneur doesn't mean that that's your end game. It doesn't mean that that's the thing that you're meant to end with. And so I love that in your story, you were kind of already doing what most people would have dreamed to have done, but it didn't feel like you yet. And then that was the difference for you was during 2020, it was like that spark of, that's it, that's me, that feels like me, that feels good. And then it just kind of like expanded. And so I love that, because for those listening who might have their own business and sometimes when it's not working, it could be a branding issue. It could be you're not living by your values, like to your point. It could also be that maybe you're just in the wrong field. You're just not quite doing it yet. And so, yeah, I love that the progression of you started as an entrepreneur, but that it took you somewhere. It evolved into what you're doing now.
Yeah, just exactly what you're saying. I just think too many people pigeonhole themselves and they stick to one thing and then they daren't. It's having that courage sometimes to step outside of that and trust. This is where it all comes together. And I say it's quite soulful. It's trusting that you are enough by yourself. It's not always about what you do. So when people start to talk far too much about, say if they're a coach and I coach this person and these are the results and I'm selling this program and it's got all these modules in, a bit like products, somebody could be saying, look at this amazing product. They distract from themselves because it feels more comfortable. And what I do is almost like get people to step outside that comfort zone. And actually, what about you? Why is just that product or that thing you're selling so brilliant? It's because of you. And that's really hard for people to we've all got, especially women, I don't want to bring too much into gender, but we suffer with imposter syndrome, blocks, mind monkeys. You'll know all this, Sarah. And I think sometimes that, by sharing that brilliance, that's what I really try and get them to do as well. So you can pivot. I'm proof of that. I was, in fitness, now in branding, yet people still followed me along for the journey because it was me as my personal brand. It was me being authentic. And some of them launched a business and that was the first person they thought of because they were already on that journey with me. So just a side note there, but just never to be afraid to stretch yourself beyond what you think you're capable. Or, I fell back into fitness because now I look back at it, there was a recession, I lost confidence, there was no work placements in advertising, and I went back to my safety net, my comfort zone of fitness. It's almost like the pandemic forced me back, and I'm so grateful for it. Obviously, that was a really difficult year, but so many people have these golden moments. That was mine. And actually, it was part of a group program I'm on. I'm going up on one, but it kind of links. And I had quite a spiritual moment. It was almost like a spiritual awakening. And I laugh at it now, but it was quite scary at the time. I ended up sleepwalking. So I'd had this energy clearing session in this branding program that I was on, quite a high level personal brand. No, what was it? Quite a high level business course. It was part spiritual as well. They did this energy clearing. I went to bed that night thinking, can't feel any different. You know, I was only a little bit woo then, and I just thought, nah, don't think that had an effect. 4 a.m. I'm stood outside in the garden, just in like a little t-shirt and shorts. And only when I came to that I realized what had happened. So I'd been dreaming that I had an explosive, and to me it felt really urgent. And when I thought back, I'd slept walked, I'd jumped out of bed, I'd run downstairs asleep, got the key in the door, and then woke up, daylight, the birds tweeting at 4 a.m. with this invisible package. I think I had gone out with the intention to throw it away from me. And that was another moment. It was a really defining moment. It felt a bit weird because I'd never really experienced anything like that before, but I'd had that energy clearing, and middle of the night, 4 a.m. in the morning, just stood there, started to come to thinking, oh my goodness, I just had to get rid of this explosive. And to me, it felt like that was the thing that I was coming away from. It was what, my business. It was like the moment I just had to get rid of it and start afresh. So the strange things happen when you start to tap into you and what you really, really want and need in your life. Yeah, bit of a warning there. Weird things can happen as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I experienced obviously not the same thing, but for me, 2020 was a big awakening for me too. I didn't necessarily find what I'm doing now in 2020, the year 2020, but I found my spiritual awakening in 2020. That was kind of when I started listening to podcasts for the first time. And it was specifically, I decided to plug in spirituality because it was something I was always agnostic. I grew up very Christian and then broke away from that in my late teens. And then I didn't have any kind of sense of self or belief systems. So I was just kind of going about life as an agnostic, not really sure, like I believe in something, but I don't know what. And so in 2020, it was kind of like one of those, I need to figure it out. I need to know what resonates. And it was the first time I actually found belief systems that was like, oh my God, that makes sense. That feels right. And I've never experienced that before. And then kind of similar to what you said, I didn't sleepwalk or anything like that, but I heard my intuition for the very first time. And it was crystal clear. And it told me that I had to not keep alcohol in the house anymore. If I wanted to, I was just starting to do this workshop on clearing out. So there's definitely a theme to like when you go through and heal and clean things out, sometimes you have some weird synchronistic, strange things happen. And in this sense, this voice crystal clear out of the blue said, if you want to do this work, you can't keep alcohol in the house. And I wasn't an alcoholic, but I was a single mom who would have that glass of wine to unwind at night. And it was one of those things that was crystal clear, like, no, if you want to really do this work, you have to let go of that. That cannot be in your realm. And so I listened. I didn't understand it at the time, but I followed directions. And now I understand. And it led me through the healing and the spiritual path that I needed to find what I wanted and was meant to do. So yeah, I feel like 2020, as awful as it was in times, I do feel like there was so much good that came out of it. And I had a question for you, because you're talking about how after you found your business and then all of your clients were now running their own businesses and taking off. So in America, we went through, and I think it's still a thing, where it's called the Great Resignation, I think, something like that. But anyways, basically a lot of people during and after 2020 haven't really gone back to working the same way. And they've quit a lot of their jobs, or they've started businesses. It's like, I think there are more entrepreneurs now than there were before 2020. And so I'm curious, has that been a similar boom for you guys over there, where there's been more people leaving traditional jobs to doing their own thing?
Yeah, definitely. I've really seen that. Even personally, my sister was the same. She always worked in corporate. In the last few years, she's launched her own business. It definitely felt like a pattern, because I say some of it, I was quite surprised that people that had long-standing roles and they were just suddenly had enough of it. And it wasn't even just that their job maybe had been furloughed. I don't know if you had furlough over there. It wasn't necessarily even that their job wasn't possible in COVID, in the pandemic. I think it was just more like, to that awakening. I think it was the first time in probably all of our lifetimes where we were just given that. Yeah, there was some really terrible times. It was really, you think back and it's almost a blur, but there were these little gems in there as well, these little gifts. And I think definitely a pattern I saw, that people were just looking within and thinking, actually, life's too short. And maybe that's what it is. How the pandemic played out globally, maybe it was just a time where I think where people said, yeah, I need to do something different. Life is too short and I just need to make the changes. But I definitely saw it. Yeah.
That is so fascinating that that was a global thing. It was more just here in America because, you know, when you don't branch out, you don't realize it's happening everywhere too. So that is so fascinating. So kind of a fun fact, I don't know if you follow astrology at all. I dabble a little bit, nothing crazy, but during 2020 in December 21st, this winter solstice, we went from the age of the Capricorn, I believe, to the age of the Aquarius. Did you know about that?
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit. I do follow it a little bit.
So the age of the Capricorn, so Capricorns are very structured. They like things to be where they are, and they kind of like to be in charge and to be the boss and to be the ones telling people what to do and keeping things the way they're supposed to be, which is kind of how things were before 2020. Whereas Aquarius is, they're innovators. Oh, you're an Aquarius. Okay. So understand about Aquarius is you guys are innovators, you're creative, you like to bring people together, you like to be outside of the box. You don't like to fit into someone else's strategy or agenda. And so I find it fascinating that in the middle of 2020, we went from basically letting go of the old traditional ways to this new way where people are figuring out, like, it's okay if I step outside the box and do my own thing, because more and more people are doing that after that shift. So I just find it fascinating when you think about, for those that don't believe in astrology, when you think about that energetic shift that happened during 2020, it kind of makes you question, like, well, a lot of things did change. And there was that big shift from one age to another.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize that, but it does, like I say, as you're saying it now, there was definitely some strange synchronicities around that whole time. And I fully believe that some of it was just not meant to be, because it's a really difficult time. Like I say, it's difficult when people went through so much difficulties, but there's certain elements that I think were just meant to be.
Yeah. And honestly, it's when we're going through difficult times, that's actually when we grow. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that part of it, but it's true. In order to grow to better versions of yourself, there has to be some growing pains. And we just felt it on a global level, which has never been experienced before. But I think that it was just more of a, we all know what we're talking. We can all, every single human being, except for maybe kids who are too young for it, every single human being on this earth can be like 2020, and we would all know what that means. Like, how, when has that ever been something that's connected the whole world before? So with the work that you're doing, do you feel like you've found your purpose now? And what is it about that you do that lights you up?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because with ADHD, I think we constantly second guess ourselves. We're constantly chasing dopamine. So I don't think I ever feel 100% like I'm fulfilling my purpose. But I don't think that's me. I think that is just my brain, the way it works. It's always chasing the next thing. So I probably not, but not in a bad way. I am probably fulfilling it on some level, but I know there'll be the next step and there'll be the next layer, and I can keep growing. So I'm a big believer in just pushing myself and growing. I do that with people I work with. They probably get to a bit where they are quite comfortable. And I'm like, nope, up to the next level. You're not staying in that comfort zone for too long. Let's take you to the next thing and let's see how it evolves. And I think that's something that we all do it. We probably get to a stage where we're quite comfortable and we forget to evolve with it. Or we do evolve, but maybe we don't evolve our brand. It's a lot to it. But yeah, the next thing that I want to this year, I'm going to focus on more speaking gigs. I've actually got something I'm in denial a little bit about. So I've signed up to some comedy coaching in April, and it's an 8-week comedy coaching course. And then for charity, I have to then perform and do a stand-up routine. Crazy. So that will add another layer. And it's not, I don't think I'll go off and be a comedian. I don't think I'm that funny, but it might unlock something else. So I'm always open to the possibility that, yeah, I think I am fulfilling it in a sense of I just love helping, especially women, but everybody, to take more space, to share our voice, find our voice, shine, dare to shine. I say sometimes just put yourself out there and not playing too small. But is there another layer to that? Possibly. I would say the comedy I'm hoping would lead to more speaking opportunities. I've signed up with a publisher this year to write 3 books. I do crazy things. It's only small books. Like, I'm doing it very ADHD friendly. So a lot of what I do is with ADHD in mind. I might not label it as that, but I like things to be bite sized. So it's going to be 3 books as like a little trilogy to help people to find this their way of doing branding and business. So yeah, a long way around there, but I think I'm achieved my purpose to a certain extent, but there's probably more, and I'm ready for it. I just like to push myself. If I can help more people on a bigger level, which is the book, which is speaking, then that's the next step. So yeah, I believe that everybody probably hits the purpose, and then can we push them a bit further? Can we get to the next one?
Yeah, I think sometimes people think, oh, I found my purpose and then that's it. And it's like, no. It's never just that. So I love that you're able to acknowledge, like, I feel like I'm fulfilling it now, but I do feel like there's more. And so that's just such a important perspective, I think, because you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. You don't ever want to be the person who is done, who's done learning and growing and everything, like, because there is no end to it. So I love that. What is it do you feel in the work that you're doing now? Whether it's, so it sounds like you're really expanding. So you're not just this intuitive specialist in branding now, but now you're trying to reach a bigger audience, and then even kind of following a different comedic route, which, it could take you someplace else. You know what I mean? You might be able to turn comedy into talking about ADHD, but also throwing in helpful tips in there as a way, and using comedy as a way to bridge to people who didn't know better. You know what I mean? There's so many ways you could take that. But yeah, so I mean, what is it that lights you up right now? Like that makes you go, okay, this is why I do what I do.
I think it is just helping people. And you're right, actually, the when I'm sort of put this side note again, but whilst I'm planning this comedy set, I keep putting things in my phone. I'll just make like random notes. And I don't want it to be too divisive here, but I've got a practice on the night I'm going to do this. I've got it down to things I'm going to talk about so far is ADHD, and putting this funny spin on it, because there's so many things we can just we have to laugh at ourselves sometimes. There's difficulties as well, as you'll know, but we've got to laugh at it. And that, and I'm talking about cats as well. I always find that's a bit of a tricky subject, whether people are a cat or dog person. I'm going to be testing that on the night, and I'm going to probably have things thrown at me for cat lovers everywhere. But I'm not a fan of cats, and actually I'm finding lots of comedy material in there. And I've gone up for one that's not answering the question whatsoever. I might have to get you to remind me the question, Sarah. Actually, what was the actual question?
Sorry, that cracked me up a little bit because I am a cat lover. I mean, to be honest, I think it's between the two. I think dog lovers get more offended than cat lovers. I think cat lovers are like, yeah, I know my cat's a jerk. Most people with dogs are like, my dog would never.
What was the question? Sorry, yeah, I did go off on a tangent there.
No worries. So did I. So I was asking, what is it about the work that you do, like, just like as a whole, that you feel is what lights you up?
That was the question, and I went off about the comedy, but in a way that it all does link, because I just love being able to communicate that with people. I love seeing the light bulb moments, just helping people with things that I feel. You probably have this with the work you do. Sometimes you feel like you're telling them things they already know, but sometimes people just need a reminder, or they've never heard it worded like that before. They've not had that, I say, permission in inverted commas. They do think they have to follow those shoulds, follow those ways. So I just love the light bulb moments. You see the almost like mini awakenings of actually, oh, I can do this my way. I can be myself. It's actually safe for me to be myself, that my people will like me for being this. So I love that side of it. I love it. It's almost like an empowerment side. So it is that two-step process of really getting to grips with who they are. And I still do love the sharing it as well, because I do see people have got blocks around that as well. I don't know how to write that. I don't know how to say that. If they're going to networking meetings, they might revert back to a very typical answer, very professional, and suddenly that personality of theirs, which is what people will love, they forget to put it in. So it's helping people break that down and just be yourself. Let's put the strategy in it as well to help you grow your business successfully your way. So I just love that. I think it is just breaking it down and empowering, I guess is the word, people that they can do it differently. And I just know how powerful that's been for me. It's taken me years. You probably do it yourself, where you have your own journey and you want to help people get there quicker, that they don't have to struggle for as many years. They have these thoughts and processes earlier. They can apply it earlier, and make more of the business earlier, and hopefully not quite as many downfalls. So it's just a passion for, I think it's helping, isn't it? I think it's just helping people.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
So my definition of purpose is you do what you love, that you already love, that you could do all day long anyway, even if, you weren't paid to do it, kind of a thing. You just love it, and it gives back to the world. And so I love asking that question, what lights you up? Because it's usually some kind of a dynamic, just like you've shared, of making a difference. And exactly too, like helping people get there quicker so that way they can learn, not necessarily the hard way. I mean, we all have our own battles and our own trials. So that's just part of our own experience. But maybe if you, with this information you have, they can go through their trials maybe quicker and overcome them quicker. And the empowerment piece is huge. So that's just beautiful. I love hearing that. I think that that's why. So when you say that you don't feel like you've necessarily found it because you feel like it's growing and evolving, I think that we all have an underlying purpose, and that's what evolves. But like the why. So for you, your why, it sounds like it's that empowerment piece. It's that helping shift mindsets, and you could do that in a number of ways, right? It doesn't have to just be in your business with, as a brand intuitiveness. It can be through comedy. It could be through, being an author. It could be podcasting, all sorts of different ways. But if like it seems like that's the thing that like really lights you up, is when I help people shift their mindset and see themselves and know that they're worthy as themselves. And not only that, but they're good enough to attract what they want to attract. Like that seems to be the thing that's like underneath it all. So it does sound like you're already kind of living that, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I think it is layers to it, and it's taken me a long time to realize this. In marketing, especially, people, again, back to that word pigeonhole. Marketing specialists will try and pigeonhole you to a certain niche, or what is your vehicle? How are you going to do this to get that outcome? And what's something I sort of pass on to people. Actually, it doesn't always matter. It could be through a podcast. I help people set up podcasts as well. I might help them write copy, create content. And some people might say, oh, well, what do? You want to get known for what you do. It doesn't really matter, because I'm just helping people express themselves and put their values, their vibe, their voice, their message into that vehicle. So it can be I hate the word vehicle, but it's that tool, what they use. It doesn't always matter what it is. So I think there's something in that. It's just being able to say your purpose, your passion, your why. It might present itself different ways, and that's okay. Like I say, it could be comedy. It could be, I love running events as well. I've run many events, and I actually run my own, again, for charity. I've got into just doing a lot of charity work. The comedy show is for Mind. It's a mental health charity in the UK. And they did, again, since the pandemic especially, they've been just tested to the limits. And yeah, my giving back. So I love that as well. And I do a charity ball now it's October this year. It was September, but my third annual one. I love that. So that's nothing to do with my business, but it's bringing people together. It's raising funds that are needed. It's creating awareness. That feels like I'm living out some sort of purpose as well, but it's a little bit detached from the other. So I think it's really interesting how they're not always linear. And I think sometimes when we are asked to say it very exact, I get it for marketing terms. They want you to speak directly to that person, but it's not always that simple. It's not always that black and white. So I think that's something to explore for people as well. They might think, well, I love doing this. Oh, but actually I love doing that. And that's where the confusion starts. It's like, well, how do they match? There'll be something between those things that connects. I call it a golden thread. We'll be very expressionate here. I say there's this golden thread that runs through everything you do. Sometimes it's just it's like a little puzzle. What is it that connects it? How is that threading together? What is the underlying factor in there? And sometimes that can lead you to purpose, or it could just be that you then know how to package it better together so it doesn't seem quite as random. But it's, again, back to you. I always say it always comes back to you.
Yeah, because we're the ones that are operating it, right? It's coming from us. As you said earlier, we're the ones. It's not the tool, it's us. We're just the ones that are facilitating it. The tools are just the tools. So, and I love the golden thread. That's such a great visualization. And I think, especially for those of us that are ADHD and stuff, like that really helps for me. And like, because I'm more of like a storyteller, especially when I do like my readings and stuff. It's kind of like the way I describe when I do my readings, I get to see the storyline and how it all merges, but it is kind of like a golden thread that connects it. And I can see how they all connect, even though they're like different ideas, but they all like come together. Anyways, I'm also going on a tangent now, but the golden thread is just such a great visual, because, two things that can seem so random and like there's no connection at all. Well, what is the love in each of them? Like, what do you love about each of them? And then I think if you ask your why enough, you're gonna find the common denominator somewhere in there. So yeah, I love that. What would you say is a common issue that your clients tend to struggle with, and what advice would you give for something like that?
Oh, it's always a good question, because again, back to that human experience, we have so many layers to this. Somebody can, again, back to that golden thread in what I do, because sometimes like, well, who do I attract? What are their problems? Again, very marketing terms, which I'm just not a fan of, if you can tell. It's not that black and white, but it's like, what are their problems? What unites them all? Well, there isn't always an answer, because we're so multi-layered, we're so multifaceted, as I say. There's different problems. But I think if I was to dig deep and think what people really, really struggle with, I think it is what I do. I think it's that putting themselves into the brand, into their business, living by their values. And if you strip that right back, it's probably back to self-trust. Can they trust that, those values that they live by, is that right for their business, or is that something separate? Is that going to attract their people? Will people like them? It all connects. So I think it is down to the mindset. And I'm not a mindset coach. I always say that I'm not a coach, I'm not a mindset coach, but a lot of what I do starts to touch on that. And I always say to people, if that's something that does pop up, I say a lot of time, journal around it. In my podcast, I constantly say, journal around it, get your thoughts down. And if something comes up, you could then go and get support for that. And it's a side-by-side journey. So you're doing this work on you as a brand, as a business owner, but there's going to be things that run alongside it that you probably do want to look at as well. But I think that is it. I think the problem is it's us in what I'm doing. If somebody has a product business, they're going to be much more confident, because it's like, this product, I can sell this product. This, so it's a candle, it burns for this many hours, it's got this scent, it's going to make you feel relaxed, it's beautiful. If then you were to turn and say, right, candle away, why should they come to you to buy that candle? It's that flip. And I think that is what people struggle with. It's the internal side of it. I think it's very conditioned. I always be careful I don't rant on this, but I'm very anti-patriarchy. I think that runs really deep. I think women are so conditioned to play small, to not speak up, to people please a little bit. And I think that comes out in branding, in marketing. When we're asked to share our voice, it's not something traditionally that we're used to be able to do safely, without it maybe being, not in every scenario, so I'm very careful I word this, but I think it's just something we can all experience. We've all felt on some level, where if we speak up, is that the right thing to do? So it's probably easier to play it small, play it down, and not share it. Again, it goes very deep, but I do think that comes into this. I do think women are more conditioned to not sing their own praises, not say how brilliant they are, yet they would say it against that candle or the car or whatever it is you're selling. That's what's so hard about personal branding, because it's you're being raw, you're being open. That can lead to masking, it can lead to creating a false self, and that's not going to attract the right people. So many layers to it, so many.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true, because when you separate a product from yourself, but you're the one that's creating the product, you have to like bring it back to yourself. Like when you think about some of your favorite brands, usually there's some reason why you choose them, why you prefer that brand, even if it's just some random product. Well, what's the story behind the person that created it? And it kind of creates that like understanding of like, oh, I kind of feel like I know this person, and it makes me want to support them more. And you know what I mean? But that can be scary, because what if the product is defective, or what if there's an issue? Then it's almost like you feel like you have to internalize all that. And yeah, I can see how that's like a delicate balance that you have to kind of work through. And then touch on the patriarchy thing. I think that there's definitely something to that, because when you look at men in sales, they're very unapologetic about it. Or, when they put themselves out there, they may not be authentic. So I do think there is also a bunch of healing that men have to do as well, because there are certain images that they feel like they have to be too. So I think it does go both ways on a certain level. But I think when it comes to putting yourself out there, I think men are more comfortable doing that. Even they may be masking, but at least they haven't been told that they can't use their voice. So they use their voice, just maybe not in the most authentic way. Whereas women have to learn how to not only use their voice, but also do it authentically. And I think there's just more layers to that, because society has for several years silenced us. And it's only been in the last, 50 years that women have finally started like moving up in the world. That's not a very long time. We've come a long way, but how many of our grandmothers were silenced? We're basically in uncharted territory with ancestral trauma, dealing with it too. So
Yeah.
point as well.
Well, yeah, you even go back to, if we are going way back to our ancestors, who were classed as witches. And when you look at that, we're brought up believing in that. I know in the States, I know Halloween is huge. You celebrate Halloween. It's become quite a big thing in the UK now. I think on the back of America, we look at you guys and think, wow, we want a piece of that. But when you look at that, witches are seen as this scary creature, this not nice sort of woman. And when you break that down, they were just women who dared to speak up. They were branded witches and burnt at the stake. So actually, it is deep. It might not be in our lifetime, but I do wonder how much of that is in here on some real subconscious level. It's that safety around it as well. So there's definitely something. But like I say, it goes both ways. I'm always careful not to just talk about getting, you say patriarchy, it almost feels like you're going down the feminism route. Not necessarily. I think patriarchy definitely affects men as well. They think they have to show up with this bravado, with this edge, with this masculine, which can start becoming toxic masculine. They've got all that to contend with. So I think if we could, I'm going off on one now. This is one of my passion subjects, but I think if we could just eventually, I would love to see equality all across the board. It's probably never going to happen, but we've just got to keep trying, haven't we? We're the ones that are showing the way, and part of what I do, share that voice, and you're safe to share that voice.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially, I think the more women are able to step into their own power, but do it on that feminine level where they're not trying to do it in the masculine way. Because I think that that's been the problem in the last several years too, is women feel like they have to be masculine in order to be successful. And I think as I've seen this personally from podcasts I've listened to, different people I follow and things like that, more and more women are realizing that they don't have to be masculine to be in their power and to be successful. And I mean, obviously that comes with a lot of deconditioning. I know, because I'm kind of trying to figure that out myself. So I think it's not really about matriarchy or patriarchy. It's exactly what you said. It's coming down. Really, we all want the same thing. We all want love and connection. We all want to share in the thing that lights us up and help people. Like, that's kind of underneath all of it. That's what we all want. And I think if we're able to connect with that, and I've seen more and more men becoming more vulnerable and more emotionally open, and it's still a very like delicate subject to bring up, because there is still a lot of toxic masculinity and this idea of men shouldn't be emotional. But with the work that I do, I'm seeing more and more men being open to my readings I give them. And that's kind of how I know where they're at. Because if I give a reading and they're just kind of like, I don't get it, but okay. Like it didn't land. It didn't make sense to them. They're just, okay, cool. But then I've seen a lot more men. That was kind of more a beginning experience with my readings. And now I'm seeing a lot more men actually like asking questions about it. This makes sense. I struggle with this. I struggle with that. And they're being open and vulnerable and asking. And then there's somewhere in between where they start off defensive, but by the end of it, they're like, that was interesting because a lot of that made sense to me. So I'm like, I'm seeing it all different levels, but I do feel like that's changing too. So I feel like the more we're able to be just open and vulnerable with each other, that's where progress really happens. So yeah, we went on a tangent a little bit there, but I think that that's just something worth talking about, because it's a very real thing, especially as women trying to build their strategy in the world. So I think it's definitely relevant. And for me, I just wanted to kind of share too on my experience. So with the witches correlation, the work that I do, that's one of my biggest struggles, is showing up authentically and showing up, in alignment. Is I have this deep fear of people not understanding what I do and persecuting me, I guess, like, which is stupid because I haven't actually been up against a lot of that. I thought when I stepped into this work, I was really afraid. I was like, I felt like I was gonna get like messages from people and like hating on me or whatever. And when I did events at like markets, I was expecting people to come up and like throw a Bible at me, like I was really afraid of that. And I didn't get really any pushback at all, which was just very surprising to me. But I still had that internal conditioning of, don't tell people what you do, because who knows, they might think you're this or that, or think I'm a witch, or you know what I mean? And so, especially when you're in the more spiritual work, it's even more of a stigma, right?
I can imagine. I seem to attract a lot of spiritual based clients, and I wonder if there's something in that they've got an extra layer of vulnerability, really show up on themselves. And that's why the work I do around being confident to repel people, I think it's really important, because it is saying that it's okay for people not to like you and to not understand what you're doing because they're not your people. And I try and flip it on its head and think, they might not understand you, and they don't want to work with you, and they don't like what you do, and they might have some really strong views on that. But actually, do you respect what they do? Do you respect their ways? Would you want to work with that person? Would you take on board their opinion? And that's how I get people to flip it. I say that a lot on repeat, and it's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. And if you have been a people pleaser and you have been scared to share your voice or take that space, and it might take one little knockback, and suddenly, I use a posture a lot actually, because I think posture is a lot of things. Women stand up and take that space, and it might take one little knock, and it's back to like internally or even physically. We make ourselves small again, or men as well. Or say any gender, it can affect us where it can just knock us. So it's a tricky one. It's repelling. It is repelling who you don't want to work with, attracting who you do, not being afraid if you do lose subscribers. I always say to people, almost celebrate it. They were never going to buy from you if it's taken one email with your belief on something and they've unsubscribed. That's a good thing, because they were never going to be your people. If you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells in the work that you do. And I think that's really important to know. Your work, the right people will hear it. And I guess if you don't share your full voice, you're not reaching the people that really, really need you. And I think that's key as well. Again, flip it on its head. If you're holding back, you're not actually helping the people that need you. You're just trying to be a bit vanilla, and it never really, you just end up sat on the fence. It's no good. Get splinters there, no good.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really do. Think my fear specifically, it's not like I want to work with those people. It's more like I don't want to try and convince them into what I do. But I guess I don't have to, if they have questions they could ask, but I don't have to like explain myself to everybody. So yeah, that's awesome. My next question for you is, what is one lesson that you've learned in your story that you feel like everyone else should learn too?
I'm going to try and think of a slightly different answer, because it would be easy for me to say everything that I've said already, and it's something that I'm passionate about being yourself. So I think I'll answer this in two different parts. I think being yourself is a big part of this. It's having that bravery, that courage. It's really hard just to own yourself. And I think for me, it was definitely the ADHD diagnosis actually that it alerted me. Sometimes self-awareness is key, and look for the good. I always say look for the good. I've got three children, three daughters. I'm always telling them, look for the good. There's always good in situations. So ADHD, I was like, okay, I can work with this. And actually that's why I'm like that. And that's why I'm a bit daft in what I do sometimes, hence signing up to the comedy gig. And actually I'm starting to own that. So years ago, I wouldn't have signed up to that. I'd probably silence that part of me, thinking that's not how I should be. I should be professional and serious. I don't do that anymore. I just waffle on and be myself, tell really bad jokes. I do it, and I own that. And I think that's the first step. And it's maybe even looking into something that if somebody's listening and they might not be aware they're neurodivergent, but maybe some of the things myself and you said, Sarah, where people have gone, oh, well, I do that. And I have that conversation so many times, and I'll never push it. But I do have a good radar. I do tend to know who's got it, but I would never say it to them. So it's listening to yourself. It's not hiding those parts of yourself. Talk about the shadow self. I'm sure you do that shadow work. It's tuning into that, because sometimes you get the answers from there of why you're holding back, why you're masking. There'll be something in that. And the second part I'll say is about asking for help. I think again that's something naturally we're not very good at. I'm not very good at. It's taken me a long time. I'm not very good at asking for help personally still, but in my business, I guess it's different because I then pay for help. It's paid help. So it's probably different to personal, but we're talking business, so I'll go with that. I outsource like crazy. I get so much support. I've got a mini team, and that's been a big game changer for me. It's a difficult one, because as you're starting out, it's looking at the finances and thinking, well, I can't afford to get that VA. I can't afford to get my podcast edited. And now I've got help with social media. And some of it has felt like a big step. I'm looking at it like, oh, trying to like go with the flow, abundance mindset. But there is fear, because you spend a lot on the outgoings. But even if it's just a little bit of support, even if it's just a VA for 3 hours a month, and I never know what it is in dollars, but it's on average in the UK, a VA is £30 an hour. I'm trying to think what that will be, about $45, $42 an hour, something like that. It might sound a lot, but I started out with paying my VA like 3 hours a month. It was £90 to me. I could do my sums and it was well worth it. So things like I had tech blocks. Tech is my nemesis. I can't stand tech. It stopped me doing so many things in the past. So by me getting that support, even if I didn't get the initial return of investment, my mindset shifted and I suddenly knew I could. So rather than me saying, oh, I can't launch that because I don't know the tech, oh, I can't possibly do that. I have no idea how to do it. That sort of went, and even 3 hours a month was enough for me just to do the basic things. I'm talking years back now, but somebody else might be in this journey where they need to set up an email list. People say it so flippantly in marketing, just set up an email list. Not that easy. If you've no idea how to do that, you need that support to do it. So that's the other one. I think being yourself, being authentic to you and tuning into you, like I always say. And the second one is, they're very linked actually. Whatever you think you can't do or you don't want to do, and I think there's some power in that. I don't want to do the tech stuff. I probably could. I set up my podcast from scratch. I got no support because back then I didn't have the money to invest. I could do it, but would I want to do that again? No. So it's that choice. Yeah, tune into you, even to what you like, what you're good at. Anything not, try and outsource if you can, or get support with it.
Yeah, all of that is really, really good advice. Another thing that I don't know how many people are open to this, but this is something that I've found helped in this arena. I also recently started using AI a little bit. Not a ton, but I do feel like, at least on the small front, like and it's probably my ADHD, but like, it's funny. I used to enjoy writing, but like if someone were to give me an assignment, oh my God, don't make me do it. And so like when it comes to summaries, I'm just like, it used to stress me out so much. Like I'm worried about the wording and saying it right. Now I'll put in what I want to say to AI and it'll polish it up for me. And then I'll go through and, I still have to go through and read it and fix it up, but it makes my life so much easier at outsourcing that, AI source and just kind of like, I know what I want to say. I just don't know how to say it the way I want to say it. And, so AI is another help that I'm just starting to sort of dabble with. I've heard people talk about it before, but I think that could be another source of help that's not necessarily monetary for those that are just barely starting off or whatever.
One thing I quickly bring into that as well, I'm aware of times I won't go on too much, but just I've had like experiences of this as well, where back to like tuning into the universe, the abundance mindset, money being quite free flowing. It's not easy to get your head around that, but if you are in a position where you can trust a little bit and just make little investments, maybe it's testing it and building it up, and that's certainly what I've done. But anytime I've made an investment, whether it's small or big, I've always got something back. I remember once I think I'd invested actually when I first invested in podcast editing, because I was doing it all myself. Again, I realized I couldn't juggle all these hats, I couldn't do it. Something had to give. So I thought, right, deep breath. It's not a huge amount, but it was enough for me to feel a bit wobbly about it. So I made that investment. Literally within minutes, I had a client contact me who said, how much would you, I'm struggling with this. I was already working on a different project for her, but she said, what would this be? And I did a little quote for her, and it was the same figure pretty much. And so that's something powerful. Sometimes that investing can come back. And it was a bit spooky, actually. I was thinking they were pretty much the same figure that I just invested. And when she asked me about that and signed up for it, it sorted itself out. And that's not always going to happen, but it was almost like a message to me that trust and you will get it back. So it's really tricky about investing. I think you've got to feel comfortable. You've got to be in a position. I do think one-off services are brilliant, especially when you're starting out and you trust that person. Yeah, absolutely. I think brilliant. And then as you get further into journeys, maybe just testing little bits of investing where you feel fear. And every time you might just get something back that reassures you that actually it's safe to just keep investing. And that's how you'll grow and grow and grow. But it's not easy. I know.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. That's a whole other thing that I definitely struggle with, that abundance mindset. I believe in it. I've seen it and heard it enough times to know that like universe has your back, abundance, all of that. But yeah, that trust. And I've experienced that too, where I put out something and then got it back immediately. So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like, it's taking like a mini leap of faith, basically, and saying, okay, if it's really aligned and I know I need this, then, I'm going to trust that it'll work itself out, that I'm deciding to invest in it. So that's a really great way to look at it as well, because I do believe that there is more than enough for everyone. It's just we all have this idea of struggle mentality, because especially, I don't know about prices out there, but prices out here are getting pretty wild. And so, but again, I've also seen people go from nothing to having everything they ever needed, from changing their mindset and believing that the universe has their back and just trusting. So yeah, that's a really great point too. Absolutely. So kind of on the same topic, actually, I love to just do like a synchronicity story time. What you just shared was like a mini one, kind of, which is cool. But do you have any other stories, whether it pertains to you finding your business or just in general, some paranormal positive story that you can't explain that felt like the universe was kind of letting you know you're not alone and it's there? Do you have anything like that you could share?
Oh, I think I might have said them all there. I think I've answered that too early. So probably that one about the financial, and probably similar. I think financial is probably the easiest one to do. The energy clearing story with the explosive, that was another one. Actually, I'll quickly break this down. Two things with that one. So after that energy clearing, I remember that happening at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'd gone back to bed, got up, driven somewhere to the shops, I think. On the way back, a song came on that I'd never actually heard, or I may have heard, but I'd never heard it in this context. And I just could not stop the tears streaming. It was a dance song, it was an uplifting song, but something in me released. And I again, so certain that's from that same energy clearing of the sleepwalking, that I was just in tears. And when I listened to the words, it's like I'd listened to the words the first time ever. And I'm trying to think of the song now. I don't know who sings it. It's a dance tune back in about 2020. It was about, I think it was about being able to breathe again. It was something, the words was really poignant, but it wasn't the words that got me crying. It was just like an instant reaction to the song. And it's then when it started to sing, the words really hit. So there's lots of synchronicities going in. The other one would probably just be financial again, where I invested in a high level group program. It was a few £1,000s. It would be more in dollars. It felt big. It felt scary. But I almost immediately got a client that week who signed up for 3 months, which pretty much, again, covered the cost of that program. So yeah, it's interesting. These little synchronicities are there if we look for them or if we trust and they come back to us, but it's that fear that holds us back. It's hard.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too earlier when you were telling that other story. I was like, oh, that's a synchronicity story. So I love that though. And the thing is, synchronicity stories, there's so many, right? Like they come in different forms, and there's always different versions of it. And so that's cool though, that you've had multiple synchronicities where you've trusted and done an investment and it was returned to you almost like it's like a form of up leveling. Like, okay, you trusted that everything's going to be okay. We're going to show you it is going to be okay. The universe is showing up in mysterious ways all the time. But I think ultimately we all are meant to thrive. So it's trusting that the universe really has our back in that.
Yeah, definitely.
So my final question for you would be, do you believe that we all have purpose?
Oh, yes. The instant reaction there, I was almost going to say I just need a minute to think about that, but no, the instant reaction was yes. And yeah, we do 100%. It is just finding it. It could be so many different layers. Again, I always use that word, these layers in life that we need to pick away at. You have people that are brought up in really unfortunate situations. I mean, ADHD is a huge one. You look at the amount of children, even now, that will be going through school undiagnosed, that may be painted as a naughty child who can't concentrate, who might end up turning to crime because they just weren't understood. They're then going to feel like they've not got a purpose. Or they might even be down on themselves, think, you know what, I'm just meant to be in prison and that's my purpose. I'm no good for anything. They were misunderstood. So, yeah, so a lot of layers to this, but I do believe everyone's got a purpose. If they've just got the support for one, which isn't always there. So the system can fail us time and time again. Even family can fail us. It's really difficult. But at some point, I believe we all go through some sort of journey at some point, we all have our own version of an awakening. So if it was somebody turned to crime, they might have an awakening in a facility that there's something there. Maybe they even do a qualification in there that lights them up. I'm using an extreme example, but I just believe there's something that our path is there. And again, back to trust in the universe. It might take 10, 20 years to get there unless we do the inner work. I think the inner work is massively important. I do believe we will find it or it will find us, but I think we can do things to help get there quicker. I think if we have that self-awareness and do the journey and do the work, we're going to find it quicker or get support. Again, back to that support. If you can't find it yourself, invite somebody to help you find it.
I agree with that too. I think that we all have a purpose. We all have our own journey. The free will piece, that's where it gets a little muddy because, what we do with our experiences is still our choice. And so for like the extremes that you're referring to, you hope that they're able to wake up, right? Wake up and have that awakening where they find that sense of worth and self. And I think that's really what it comes down to is a lot of our journey is about finding it. A lot to what you were saying already. It's about coming back home to us and figuring out who we are and all of that. And not all of us, unfortunately, are able to get there. But I think with more people such as yourself who are advocating for people to realize, no, you're enough as you are. And not only that, but you're incredible if you just get to know yourself a little more. So I think the work that you're doing is so good out there, and it's helping people find their purpose, maybe in ways they never even realized was possible. And hopefully we can help wake more people up, you know?
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I think the more people that, even myself and you, even having a podcast, sharing our voice, sharing our stories, it might inspire other people to look at themselves, or they might then inspire the next person. That ripple effect can be huge. So I think the more people that are doing this, and even if they feel like they're not talking to anybody, even if one person listens, that could have a massive ripple effect. They might tell 10 people, they might set up their own podcast and reach thousands of people. The more we talk about, yeah, like I say, your brilliance, your worth, taking that space. Yeah, it can sometimes feel like you're not really talking to people, especially when you're starting out, but it's going to get it's going to reach somebody that needs to hear it. And I think, you know what, even if it's just one person, it's worth it, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, 100%. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a great conversation. I mean, I can't wait to go back and edit it, because then I always like retain it all over again. It's been such a great conversation. Where can our listeners find you if they want to work with you more?
Yeah, so I'll send all my links. They'll be in the show notes, won't they? But it is just Carly. It's quite a new website. It's a bit of a tongue twister. CarlyCowell.com is the website, and that links to everything else on there. It's got my podcast. It's got a really fabulous free download about brand values, which are pretty much what we've talked about, your own values. I would say that's a starting point. And even if you're not in business, it's worth still looking at that exercise, because it really helps you get into tune with you. And that's kind of it. Yeah, my website and my podcast, I would say, are the main two. And let's say, yeah, I love working with Americans because I'm quite a night owl. I love the fact that I have one client who's 5 hours behind. I get confused with the time zones. I know it's like, is that EST? And then one is 8 hours behind. And I love that, because I can be working at night time and it's still afternoon over there, and I can quickly check something, and it really works really well. So yeah, again, that's back to finding the way you work, the way you like things. It's all about you. Just to wrap things up again, if in case I've not said that enough, it is all about you.
Love that. And I will be sure to put all that information in the show notes. So if you want to work with her directly, you can find her in the show notes, so you don't have to look too far or too hard. And thank you so much again for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved chatting. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.